Alright, so students, I think I'm gonna start now. I'm gonna start. I'm not gonna wait any longer. So for those persons who are not online, then I guess they would have to watch it later on. 5 students. I'm gonna start with you. Right. So as I was saying before, in terms of the human skeletal system, muscles, the different types of muscles play a very important role in terms of the system moving. Because bones, 2 or more bones normally form what is called joint. So in order for movement to take place at a particular joint, then your muscles need to contract and relax so that that movement can actually take place. So in terms of the muscles, the different types, the first one is called voluntary muscle, and the voluntary muscle normally attached to the bones of the skeletal system. Now there is a reason why they call these muscles voluntary muscle. Voluntary mean that you, whenever these muscles contract and relax, you is the one who actually determine if they contract and relax. For example, the muscles that make up your arms, if somebody throws something at you in terms of a ball or just about any object for you to actually catch, then you would have to decide if you want to catch that object. So the fact that you make that decision simply mean that you decide if the muscles of your arms contract or relax. So the second point I'm saying, this is called voluntary muscle because it contract when you wish it to. So if you don't wish to catch the ball, then the muscles of your arms not going to contract. So basically they work with what your brain says. So if your brain send the information to the muscles of your arms telling them to go and catch the ball, then basically those muscles they're not gonna start to contract. So that is why they are called voluntary muscles, because they only contract when you decide for them to contract. Again, another example I can use, you lay down in the bed 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. You decide that you're not going to wake up, and in order for you to wake up and start to walk outside, then the muscles of your feet will actually contract. Now the fact that you decide to lay down in bed simply mean that the muscles that make up your feet, they're not going to contract because you don't make the decision to get up out of bed. Now let's say for example those muscles they were called involuntary muscle. What involuntary muscle mean that these muscles contract automatically. That simply means that you don't have to consciously make a decision. So if the muscles that make up your legs, for example, if they were involuntary muscle, then once daylight come, those muscles would just contract automatically, and it does not matter what you think or believe. Automatically you will walk out of the bed just like that, like magic. But that is not the case. Those muscles, they are not involuntary, they are voluntary. That simply means that they contract when you wish them to, and that simply means when you make that decision. So that is what is known as voluntary muscles. So voluntary muscles normally cover the skeletal system entirely. So repeat. James, you hearing me clearly? Students, you hearing me clearly? Okay. Oh, James not hearing me clearly. I realize that your voice is chipping out, so I don't know if it's your connection. Alright, let's hope it improved though. Alright, so moving on to the next type of muscle. So right away, if I should ask you the question to give me different types of muscles, then of course voluntary muscle will be one of them. So the involuntary muscle, if you realize for the heading, we have involuntary muscle slash smooth muscle. What this means is that again we have two terms that mean the same thing, and it is very important that as science students you understand that for different concepts during your study you will come across two terms that mean the same thing. And the reason why we normally have so many change of term is because we have different persons who do researches, we have different persons who write materials in terms of relating to the subject, and they might use a different term. So somebody in the United States versus somebody in the Caribbean versus somebody in Europe that would compile these materials. So that's why I would use terms. So you might read a textbook this morning and they said that the three types of muscles are voluntary, involuntary, and cardiac muscle. And later on you read a textbook and they say that the three types of muscles are voluntary, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. So you need to know that at times there are change of terms, but they mean the same thing. But you would have to know which terms are saying the same thing. So you can say voluntary muscle or you can say involuntary muscle or smooth muscle. So if I ask you the question for you to give me two types of muscles, don't tell me involuntary and smooth muscle. You will only get 1 mark because these are saying the same thing. So you're going to tell me voluntary and involuntary, or you're going to say voluntary and smooth muscle. So what is voluntary, involuntary muscle? This muscle is under automatic control. Now this type of muscle, you mostly find them at the internal section of the human body. For example, muscles that make up the digestive system, muscles that make up the respiratory system, for example your lungs, for example your trachea. These muscles contract automatically. That simply means once a particular function is triggered to take place inside the human body, then these muscles gonna work automatically. I'm gonna give you a perfect example. Let's say for example you decide to breathe in. Take a deep breath. Then you will realize that externally you will actually take that deep breath. But under normal circumstances, you will realize that automatically you're breathing in and out automatically. Now the muscles that make up your lungs, for example, these muscles need to contract and relax. Now can anybody give me an example of whenever they would have tell their lungs not to contract and relax? Have you ever tried that? Yes or no? So do you believe? No, I'm saying that do you believe that you can tell your lungs to contract? Yes or no? Okay, perfect. That is simply because the muscles that make up your lungs, for example, those muscles, they are involuntary muscle. That means those muscles work automatically. You can control them. But the muscles that make your arms, your legs, you can control those. Because whenever you're bending your arms at the elbow joint, you can decide yes or no if you want to bend your arm at the elbow joint. So the fact that you can decide that the muscles that make up your arms, those muscles are called voluntary muscle, because those muscles contract when you wish them to contract. So the involuntary muscles are the smooth muscle. These muscles, they actually work under automatic contraction, automatic control, and they are mostly found inside of the human body. So that simply means that your kidneys, for example, your bladder, the pancreas, all those internal organs, it is not voluntary muscles that make them up. It is involuntary muscle. Because let's say for example, the kidneys. Let's say for example, the kidneys, it was just voluntary muscle that actually make up the kidneys. Then you could have decided when your kidney work yes or no, but you can't do that. That is simply because the muscles that make up your kidneys, those muscles are involuntary muscle. So right away there is a bubbling question that I will go sure gonna ask you that question for you to give me the difference between voluntary muscle and involuntary muscle. You will get that question, and it's a question that CXC will ask for you to give the difference between voluntary muscle and involuntary muscle. And it's simple, it's just for you to define them both. So voluntary muscles, those muscles normally contract when you decide for them to contract, while involuntary muscle contract automatically. So in terms of you telling the differences, you just simply say voluntary muscles contract when you wish for them to do so, while involuntary muscle contract automatically. So that is the difference between the voluntary and involuntary muscle. Moving down to the second pointer there. You do not consciously control the contraction of involuntary muscle. Now, them using the term conscious mean that you are aware, you think about it, whether you must do it yes or no. That is what they mean by consciously control. And again, the beating of the human heart. You cannot tell the heart and say, guess what, stop beat for 1 minute. No, you can't tell the heart that. And that is simply because the heart, the muscle that make up the heart, yes, it is called the cardiac muscle, but it is an example of an involuntary muscle. And that's what you're seeing. This is an involuntary muscle. So just like other organs, as I would have said, the pancreas, the gallbladder, those are all internal organs. The windpipe, the bronchus, the bronchioles, those are sections, are part of the respiratory system. You cannot tell those organs to work yes or no. That is simple because the muscles that make up those organs, those muscles, they actually work automatically. They work based on what is going on inside of you. So if your body want more oxygen, then automatically those muscles going to contract faster so that the respiratory system can take in the oxygen. The third pointer, examples of this include the smooth circular muscle found in the walls of the intestine. So they are talking about the digestive system now, which moves food by a process that is called peristalsis. So peristalsis, it is a muscular action that takes place throughout all of those throughout the human digestive system, where the food normally move along what is called the alimentary canal or the gut. So whenever you swallow the food don't just drop from the back of your mouth into your stomach like that. No. There's a process that is called peristalsis, where the muscles of the esophagus basically contract and relax, alternatively to actually push the food along. So once you swallow the food at the middle of your esophagus or the throat, you can't tell the food to stop there and don't go down. No, simply because the muscles that are within that part of your body, they actually work automatically, meaning that they are involuntary muscles. So once they are stimulated to carry out a function, then they're going to carry out that function automatically. You can't tell them in the middle of that process that, guess what, me nah bother. So that is why you realize when you swallow the food, once it reaches down the esophagus there, you're going to continuously go down. You can't tell us, guess what, me nah bother want to swallow you, come back up. No. That is, if those muscles did contract voluntarily, then when you decide to swallow the food, once it reach halfway, you could actually take it up back, but no, the muscles, they work automatically. So once the food entered there, they're going to contract automatically, and it will actually go or continue on its way down. So the final type of muscle, it is called the cardiac muscle. So again, in terms of examples where we can find the other muscles, as for the voluntary one, these muscles normally cover your skeletal system, as in they normally cover the bones. As for the involuntary muscles, these you normally find them inside of the body. That simply means that they make up your internal organs. For example, the heart, the lungs, the kidney, the pancreas, just about all the internal organs. And the final or the third type of muscle is the cardiac muscle. And the cardiac muscle, it is only found one place in the human body. I would have said that this morning in the HNS class, and that is in your heart. So the cardiac muscle, it is an example of an involuntary muscle. That simply means that you cannot decide when it contract. It actually contract automatically once the heart is stimulated to actually contract to pump blood around the human body. And again, this muscle, it is special, meaning that it is extremely powerful, it is strong, it does not easily fatigue. That means that it does not get tired easily. So that's what pointer number 3 is saying, where it is saying that very strong and resistant to fatigue. So resistant to fatigue means that it does not get tired easily. So the unique thing about the cardiac muscle is that once there's life in human being, then this muscle continuously contract through life, unless you're experiencing some medical problem where they have to do a heart transplant, and if the heart should be removed from the human body, then they have to put you on a machine to pump the blood along. So yes, your heart, it can stop beat like for a few minutes, but not definitely for entire 5-6 hours. No, eventually life gonna actually be gone out of the human body. So in terms of location, they are saying that it is located in the walls of the heart. And you will realize that for the 3 types of muscles, somewhere in the notes they actually tell you where they are located. So as for the voluntary one, they say that it attached to the bones of the skeleton. As for the involuntary one, they said that these are found internally, meaning organs that are inside the human body. And that is, of course, the heart, the lungs, and the list goes on in terms of those organs. And as for the cardiac muscle, it is found or located in the walls of the heart. Are you clear in terms of understanding those 3 types of muscles? Okay, yeah. Pretty much easy to understand, I would say. Alright, so after looking at the 3 types of muscles, next thing that we need to focus on now is how muscles work, how them contract. Because I'm quite sure that they don't contract just like magic. They're going to need some form of energy. They're going to need some form of other chemicals. So how muscle contract, that is basically what we're going to look into now. So it starts by the arrival of nerve impulses. What do we mean by nerve impulses? Now, I'm going to use you bending the arm at the elbow joint, for example. So if you decide to bend your arm at the elbow joint, I'm sure that the elbow joint should or will get some form of information, and that information will come from the brain. So it is a process, meaning that, so let me bring up a diagram. This one's small. Right, so here we have an image right there. So we have, it is extended there, and we have bending or flexion taking place here. So if you decide to extend your arm at the elbow joint, the fact that your brain made that decision, once you make that decision to extend the arm at the elbow joint, it is now the brain or the nervous system that now gonna send information to the muscles of the arm, and the muscle gonna be the bicep, which is the top one there. So once you make the decision to bend the arm or extend the James? Yes, you're not seeing that picture? Okay, alright, let me soon see it. You see the picture now? Okay. Once you hear me explaining something and it sounds like I'm showing a picture or something, then you indicate if you're not seeing it. Right. So what it is showing now is the diagram is showing one the arm extending, which is this. That means it's straighten, and the arm being bent, or if you want to use the term flex. Now I'm saying that if you decide to extend the arm at the elbow joint, what take place in terms of process is that after you make that decision and the brain make that decision to extend at the elbow joint, the brain will now send the information to the muscles, to this muscle which is called the bicep, telling the bicep that you decide to bend or extend the arm, telling this muscle to now actually contract. So once the bicep get the information for it to contract, then it will actually bend at the elbow joint. So going back to the slide, the first pointer which said that it starts by the arrival of nerve impulses. So nerve impulses mean message, it mean information. So it is the brain that will send the information to the bicep, telling the bicep to contract, and then you will bend your arm at the elbow joint. So that is what they mean by nerve impulse arrival. So that simply means that the information must come from the brain. So once the information comes from the brain, instructing the muscle to contract, then it will actually contract. So the arrival of nerve impulses simply mean, in a nutshell, the arrival of message from the brain instructing that particular muscle to contract. So that's what pointer 1 is talking about. Pointer 2, calcium ion is then released into the muscle, and then ATP. Now ATP is called adenosine triphosphate. That's what ATP means, which shortly I will go through ATP in much more detail. Third pointer, muscles are attached to bones so that when they contract, they basically pull on the bone. So back to, let me bring up back the image. Right, so once a muscle, let's say for example the bicep here, once the bicep get the information for it to contract in terms of length, you will realize that this one to the right here, it is long, while the one to the left, it is short. So this bicep now, it is actually relaxing, because whenever a muscle is relaxed, it is not shortened, it is not bulge up. So the bicep here is actually relaxed. Once the bicep get the information that it need to contract so your arm can build at the elbow joint, then it now gonna get shorter in terms of its length. So that's what that pointer is talking about. Right, so in terms of getting shorter, so the bicep, you will realize that when you bend your arm at the elbow joint, the bicep normally bulge up. That means say it's shorter, or it get fatter. Now in terms of pointer number 2, ATP Alright, so this is an image that we normally use to explain ATP. Again, it stands for adenosine triphosphate, while ADP is known as adenosine diphosphate. Now, energy normally stored in muscles in the format of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So that's why you see energy store beside ATP right there. So we're going to look at the diagram by moving along this direction. So you're seeing here energy for work in cell. So we are using the muscular cell, for example. Now, the fact that it said triphosphate, that simply means that we have three P's joining together. That's what it actually mean. So the three P's, they actually line out behind each other, and the fact that they line out each other mean that they're actually attached. So they basically attach to each other like a train. That's what it basically talking about. Let's see if I can. Right, so as for those P's, once they are separated or once break off from the other two, because if it said triphosphate, it means three. So in order for the energy to release, one of the phosphate group need to remove itself from the other two. So that's why you have the minus sign there, and you have phosphate. So again, adenosine triphosphate, that is how the energy is stored. So once the muscle going to do some work, the only way the muscle can get the energy release is by one of the phosphate group breaking off from the other two. It is just like you have a bottle with some juice in it. The only way you can get the juice from that bottle is by you removing the bottle cork. If you don't remove the bottle cork and you turn the juice to your head, to your mouth, try to drink it, you're not going to get anything because you would have not removed the covering for the bottle. So it is the same thing that is taking place here. The energy is stored in the phosphate group adenosine triphosphate. So the only way the energy can release is by one of the phosphate group being separating from the other two. So that is why you have the minus sign there, and then you have energy for work in the cell. Now, once one of the phosphate group is removed, then what is now taking place is that the other two phosphates still have some amount of energy, but it is very low in terms of the energy. So the fact that we have a remainder of two phosphate group, that is why you're seeing ADP down the bottom there, and it stands for adenosine diphosphate, and it said energy low. So yes, energy is still in ADP, but it is low, and that is simply because one of the phosphate group would have been minus up there. So the diagram continue, we are seeing the arrow, you're seeing a plus sign now in terms of phosphate, so you lose one over here, but over this side I get one other one on it, and it now gonna call triphosphate again. Now the question that you should be asking now, where does this additional phosphate group come from now? And that is simply because as human being, you're constantly eating. So the fact that you eat, so that's why you see the food up there. So you're seeing the word food. So the fact that you continuously consume food mean that once you lose a phosphate group during a particular process, during you doing a particular activity, you will lose phosphate group. But the fact that you constantly eat, you eat breakfast, you eat lunch sometime, you eat dinner sometimes. So the fact that you continuously eat throughout a particular group day simply mean that these ADP eventually they're gonna come back to ATP, because the food that you consume. Repeat. I'm not hearing you clearly, James. You can type it in the chat section. If the fact that I'm not right, so every time you consume and the food goes through the entire digestive system and break down, it is now stored inside your cells or inside your muscle cells. So the question I can ask you, or you can ask, in what format is energy stored inside your muscle cells? The answer for that, or the answer that you should give me, is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So every time you eat, every time you consume, and the human digestive system break down the food completely, the energy from that food will store inside your muscle cells. So the question I can ask you, or you can ask, what is the format by which that energy is stored inside your muscle cell? And then I would say in the format of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. So again, the energy is stored in that format. So if you now decide to get up without the question, what is the format by which energy is stored in your muscles, in your muscle cell? So what is the format by which energy is stored in your muscle cell? Yes, Sparks, I realize that the hand is up. Adenosine diphosphate. So diphosphate, DI. So the spelling for it is so adenosine, so it is diphosphate. Right, adenosine diphosphate, and ATP is triphosphate, TRI. Right, so the question I posed a while ago was what is the format by which energy is stored in your muscle cell? So what format is energy stored in your muscle cell? So I'm saying that it is ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and why we say tri is because we have three phosphate groups basically joined together. So it is like they form a circle or they form a train. So it is within those three phosphate group that the energy is stored. So eventually the energy going to release, but the energy only going to release whenever that particular muscle is doing some work. So let's say for example you're sitting down now or you're lying down. So the muscles that make up your legs, those muscles basically they are not working. So within the muscles that make up your legs, presently, now, currently, those muscles they are filled with ATP, adenosine triphosphate. But if I should say, guess what? When I get up and go outside and start walk, those ATP they will actually change over to ADP, and that is simple because the fact that you get up and start walk means say one of the phosphate group are go break off, and a break where it are go break off means say energy are go release. So the fact that one of the phosphate group break off means that it just release, it just let go the energy that of course was being stored inside those three P's. So the fact that one break off mean that it now gonna call ADP, and so yes, there's some amount of energy in ADP, but guess what, it low. So that is why whenever you're walking you realize that sometimes you're walking and running and eventually you get tired in terms of your muscles. You realize that the muscles them might feel weak, they might feel tired. That is simple because the energy in them might get low now. So the only way those energy can replenish is by you getting some rest, getting some food, and after you rest for a while you realize that you kind of feel more energetic. That is simple because the circulatory system now able to carry some more of the energy, some more of the phosphate to those muscles so that you can actually replenish them. And that is why we have this cycle taking place. So that's why I say food plus oxygen, energy makes ATP. So you have the plus sign there, mean that the fact that it is now diphosphate mean 2, you're going to need an additional one, or you're going to need another one for it to be called triphosphate again. So the only way this cycle can continue is by you constantly eating. So it's not like you can eat one bucket of food today and that lasts for an entire year. No, it is a cycle. It is a continuous cycle that takes place through the day. So a lot of questions I can ask you from this whole contraction. Repeat. Oh, you post a question in the chat, so I need to go into the chat. Alright, give me a moment. All right. So, yeah, excellent question. So, the question in the chat: how does the ATP differs from ADP? All right. So, very good question. So, ATP. So, I'll give you the answer now. So, you listening? ATP has three phosphate groups, while ADP has two phosphate groups. That's the answer for it. So ATP has three phosphate groups joined together. So that means it's three of them joined together, while ADP only have two phosphate groups joining to each other. That's one explanation. I can give you another one. You ready for the other possible answer? ATP is rich in energy. So ATP is energy rich. ATP is rich in energy, while ADP is energy low. And I'll give you that answer based on what the diagram is showing. Because when you look at the diagram, you'll see ATP store energy. That means they have a lot of energy. And for ADP, you realize that them say energy low. So that's why I give you that answer. So in terms of difference, those are two possible answers that I can do. One, you're familiar with them? And I heard up to the part where you say the other teacher would have given it. Oh, the explanation part is what you didn't get. Okay, I get you. Okay. Right, so in terms of questions, very good question in terms of difference. I mean, well, that one never come to mind in terms of asking you. So that this question definitely gonna come on the question. So very good question. So if I should ask you to give me one different, so I can ask you to give me one different, or I can ask you to give me two. So if I ask you to give me two differences, now one will be ATP has three phosphate groups, while ADP only has two phosphate groups. And the other difference is that ATP, you can say it contains a whole heap of energy, or you can say that it is energy rich, while ADP is energy low. So, very good question. So, those are two differences between the two types of energy storage system in your muscle cell. So again, the second one. Alright, then write it down, man. ATP is energy rich. Oh, yo, kind of hard to remember. Oh, okay, so ATP is energy rich, while ADP is energy low. Just remember that. So you don't have to go in a big detailed bossy explanation. Just say ATP is energy rich, while ADP is energy low. And the difference before that was ATP have three phosphate groups, while ADP have two phosphate groups. Some persons even simplify by saying ATP have three P's and ADP have only two P's. If you give me that, you will get it correct, because I know that you're talking about the phosphates. Yeah, yes. Alright, so continuing in terms of how the muscles work. So they said that the last point on this slide is saying that the muscles shortens and get fatter. And I would have explained that. No. This slide now is talking about that image that I would have shown you a while ago in terms of you bending or extending the arm at the elbow joint. So they are saying pull up your lower arm and watch the muscle in your upper arm bulge. So Let's say, for example, you straighten the hand at the elbow joint. If you should now bend it, so that simply means that you have flex the arm at the elbow joint. The same image I showed you a while ago. You will realize that when you look at the muscle, you realize that it start bulge up, means it get fatter and fatter, or it is getting higher in terms of its height. So that's what I'm talking about there. Screen soon, right? It is being shared now. Right, so just look at the two muscles now. You realize that the one that is extending or the one that is straightening, the muscle, it is not bulge up. You're not seeing it fatter in terms of its size. But this one where it is bent, it actually it gets shorter and it gets fatter in terms of its height. So that's what they're talking about there in terms of the first pointer. Right, so the first pointer which would have said that pull your lower arm and watch the muscle in your upper arm bulge up. So it is the bicep that they're talking about. When a muscle relaxes, it does not do any work. So that's why I did use the example in terms of you lying down or sitting down now. So most of your body muscles, they are relaxing, so they are not doing any work. So that whole ATP converting or losing one of its phosphate group change over to ADP, that is not taking place a whole lot in your muscles because you're just sitting or just. Yes, miss. Repeat. All right. Once the cell is doing any form of work in terms of process taking place, then yes, because in terms of energy stored inside those cells or inside any body part, the energy is always stored in that format that is known as ATP. So once that cell do some form of work, the answer is yes. Yes. Uh, oh, so the question you're asking is this is if other animals, for example, this process is taking place in terms of ATP and ADP. Yes, yes. The process is taking place inside their body. So that's why we are classified as animal also, just that we call ourselves human. Cow call themselves cow, goat call themselves goat. So the answer for that question is yes. This same explanation is the same process is taking place inside those animals. The third pointer, it extend and gets thinner due to the action of another muscle contracting. So they're basically explaining the whole muscular movement that is taking place at the arms. Now moving down to pointer number 4, antagonistically, that's a term that you need to understand all of this concept. So this other muscle contract in opposition and the pair of muscle said to be working antagonistically. So I'm going to go back to the diagram and explain what we mean when we use the term antagonistic muscular contraction, because that is a term that you need to understand. What do we mean by two muscles working antagonistically? Now, muscles normally work in pair. So this diagram, this is the bicep, that is the muscle above the humerus, and around the back of the humerus, that is the back of your hand, this muscle is called the tricep. Now these muscles, they work together. What that means is that when one of them is contracting, the other one is relaxing. So at no point in time the bicep should be contracting and the tricep contracting at the same time. If that is taking place, then that is when you start feel some form of pain. I heard persons normally say that whenever they are swimming or sometimes they have what is called muscle contract and them a feel one sharp pain. Have you ever experienced that? Something where you call muscle contract and you feel pain? Okay, very good. Right, right. So when you're experiencing muscle contract, that is whenever two muscles that's supposed to work together, where when one contract the other one relax. Now when you experience what we call muscle contract and you start feeling some pain, that is whenever the two muscles are contracting at the same time. So what is taking place is that what is happening is that the two muscles, they are basically pulling on each other. So if the two of them are contract, it two of them will actually generate a type of force, a type of power. So that's when you start to feel pain. Because looking at the diagram here, when this muscle contract, which is the bicep, when it contract, by right the tricep should be relaxing. So when the tricep relax, it basically release these bones. So the fact that the tricep relax, it is releasing these bones. So the bicep that is contracting can now pull these bones up so you can bend it. So let's say for example the bicep is contracting, trying to pull the bone so you can bend it, and at the same time the tricep is contracting. What that simply means is that no movement will be able to take place at the elbow joint here, because the bicep are pull this a direction here, and the tricep are pull this a direction. So basically the movement just stop. So under normal circumstance, that is not what should be taking place. You should be having the bicep contracting so it can pull the bone up, and the tricep relax so you can basically allow it to pull up. Now this diagram now, it is the opposite that going to take place. In order for you to extend or straighten the arm at the elbow joint, this time the bicep going to relax. So when the bicep relax, it basically release the tension off a bone, and then the tricep now going to contract. Now when the tricep contract, it actually pull the arm down so that it can actually extend and straighten. So when we use the term, when we said that two muscles they are working antagonistically, yes, it's a big and bossy word, but it just simply means two muscles are work together where one contract and the other one relax. So the question that I will give you is that what does the term antagonistic muscle contraction mean? So write down that question. What does the term antagonistic muscle contraction mean? I'm going to bring up the slide so you can see the spelling. So the question is, what does the term antagonistic muscle contraction mean? So write the question, what does the term antagonistic muscle contraction mean? You have the question? Alright, so the answer is, this is when two muscles work together. So this is when two muscles work together to allow movement at a joint, where one contract and the other one relax. Where one contract and the other one relax. Everybody finished now? Alright, so perfect. So when you see that question come around again, you should be able to answer it. So what do I mean whenever I say two muscles are working antagonistically? So I can just pose that question. What do I mean when two muscles are working antagonistically? And that is whenever these muscles they are working together where one is contracting and the other one is relaxing. So looking on, and moving on. So as you can see now, movement at the elbow joint. So would have been going through movement at the elbow joint. So flexion or flex, so we can use the term flex, we can say flexion, or we can say bend. So that is what is we're going to look at now. What happens when we bend the arm at the elbow joint? Right, so here's a diagram now. Right, so we're going to look at these two diagrams. So this is the elbow joint. So A, we have flex. So the elbow joint is being bent, or it is being flexed there. So in terms of the muscles, this one is called the bicep. So the bicep is now contracting. So if you look at the bicep on their left side versus the bicep on the right side, you realize that they are completely different in terms of its thickness, or how fatter it is being on the right versus the left. Now, in terms of the name difference, some persons might wondering why we call them, why one is known as the bicep and why one is known as the tricep. Now they get the name based on the point of attachment. Now looking at the diagram, as for the bicep, so this is one point of attachment there, and that is one point of attachment there. As for the tricep, if you look at the diagram, you will see one point of attachment right there and another one of attachment right there. Now there's a third one that is underneath there. That is why it is known as the triceps. So triceps mean three. So it's all about their points of attachment, how many bones they are connected to. That's why we have a name difference. So in terms of you bending the arm at the elbow joint, that is all the diagram to the left is showing. So they are saying that the bicep contract and the tricep is relaxing at that particular moment. To the right hand side now, you're seeing the labeling, the arm is extending. So at this particular moment, it is a total reverse. The bicep is now relaxing and the tricep is now contracting. Now look at the size, look at the thickness of the tricep, and to the right hand side you realize that it is much thicker than over the left hand side. That is because on the left hand side here, the tricep was relaxing, so it not gonna get fat in terms of its thickness. But over the right hand side, where they said that the tricep is contracting, it actually get fatter in terms of its thickness. I'm seeing Nelson saying that she's having problem in the WhatsApp group, so she's saying that the phone is giving problems. So I hope that is sorted out, but at least she can watch the video later on. Osh, sorry for that, Nelson. Let me bring up back the slide. Right, so the second pointer, the bicep muscle and the humerus contract to pull the ulna and radius closer. So the second pointer have three bones that we should know where those bones are located. So humerus, ulna, and radius. I'm gonna bring up back the image so you can identify and of course see what I'm talking about in terms of those three bones. Right, so the humerus, that is the large bone. So the humerus is that bone that you can feel between the shoulder joint and the elbow joint. So that bone that you're feeling, that is what is known as the humerus. So in terms of the bicep normally they above the humerus, and in terms of attachment, you can see that one point of it is attached to this bone, that is called the shoulder bone, and the next point is attached to the same shoulder bone right there. Down the bottom here, it is attached to the radius. So see the radius there. So student, the lower arms, your lower arm of course is made up of two bones. So you have two bones down the lower arm there. So you have the radius there, and then you have the ulna. So in terms of location, the ulna normally be the one at the lower end, and the radius normally a bit above it. So what they're saying is that in order for the arm to bend at the elbow joint, when the bicep contract, which is this, it normally pull on these lower bones. So you basically pull them closer and closer. So the more the bicep contract is, the more it is pulling it. Now the opposite take place whenever your hand is extending or straightening at the elbow joint. This time is not the bicep that going to pull. This time is the tricep. So why tricep, how do you know when the tricep contract, the tricep basically draw the bone them further and further away from the uterus. From the humerus I should say. And that is how you have the arm being extended. So the bicep, the tricep, the ulna, the radius, and of course the humerus, you need to know where all of those are located. So in terms of that image that I showed you a while ago, I think I need to send you that because I don't think it is in the PowerPoint presentation. So I can send you in the WhatsApp group, or I can edit the PowerPoint presentation and put the diagram in it, the image, so that if you're going through it you can see it. I think I'm going to do that. Right, I'm going to edit the PowerPoint, and I'm going to put it in the PowerPoint. For example, here where it is talking about flexion and elbow and movement, I think I'm going to put it right somewhere in the PowerPoint. You understand?
Yes.
Right. So I'm going to edit the PowerPoint and put it so whenever you're going through the PowerPoint, for example, you actually see it there. I don't know why I never put it in the PowerPoint. So extension at the elbow joint, all these notes is basically saying the same thing that I would have been explaining in terms of whenever you straighten or extend the arm at the elbow joint. So in terms of what we would have covered, the types of muscles. So we would have continued from last class, where we would have looked at the tissues, and the tissues are bones, the ligaments, tendons, muscles. So we finish last class there. So today's class we picked up on the types of muscles, and again the three types of muscles: voluntary muscles, and they are voluntary muscles simply because these muscles normally contract when we wish for them to do so, simply because these muscles cover the external section or the external part of your skeletal system. So whether you plan to clap your hand, you plan to walk, you plan to write, all of those are external movements. So those muscles only contract when you wish them to do so. As for the involuntary muscle slash, or if you want to say smooth muscles, these are normally attached to internal body parts. So internal body organs such as the walls that make up the digestive system, your heart, your lungs, those, your kidneys, your liver, those are internal organs. So those internal organs, the muscles that make up those internal organs, are called involuntary muscles. And these muscles normally work or contract automatically. What that means is that once these body parts are stimulated or then get information to carry out a particular function, then you cannot tell these body parts not to carry out that function, because the muscle is going to start to work automatically. So that's why they are called involuntary muscle. Now the cardiac, this is another type of muscle, and they are saying that it is a special type of involuntary muscle. In terms of location, it is only located in the human heart. A very special feature for it is that it always works. It works continuously, as it is of course resistant to fatigue. Also, how muscles contract, as I said, the muscles, they don't just work like that, they need some form of energy. So the energy normally is stored in a format that is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Once the muscle gonna do some work, then all the energy is released is by one of the phosphate group breaking off, so separating from the other phosphate group. And the fact that it separate or break off from that phosphate group mean that it's gonna lose one of its phosphate group. So that's why it is called adenosine diphosphate and not triphosphate anymore, simply because it would have lose one of its phosphate group. So the only way it can regain its leverage in terms of being called triphosphate is by you eating. So when you eat and replenish the body in terms of nutrients that provide energy, then the plus sign now come into play where the additional phosphate group now add to diphosphate and change it over to triphosphate. So this cycle that you're seeing, it take place continuously throughout your life, throughout your day. You get up, you eat. Once you get up and eat, then you don't gonna have a lot of triphosphate. Once you start to do some work, this section now of the diagrams come into play, where a lot of the muscles they are now having ADP. Lunchtime now you start to eat. This side now start to take place, where the diphosphate they are now changing over to triphosphate. You start to do some work, this side come into play. So it is like a cycle. The more you do work, the more you lose one of the phosphate groups. So the more diphosphate you have in the human body, and the more you eat or as you eat, it actually convert or change over back to triphosphate, I should actually say. So other concept we looked at was, of course, movement at the elbow joint. So in terms of notes and explanation on all of that, that's it for today. Next class, in terms of we will continue in terms of explanation or concept by looking at the types of joints of the human skeletal system. Right, so you have some questions. I gave you some questions the last class. I'm not hearing. I'm asking if I did give you some questions the last class. Question. I got questions the last class. All right. So I'm gonna pose some questions.
No, sir.
Okay, no problem. I'm gonna pose the questions now. You soon get the question. So these questions I'm gonna need for you to complete them. Ensure that I get them, because I will be grading basically everything that I give you. So the questions are on the screen. So go ahead and get them down so I can scroll along so that I get more questions. So question 1, question 2, up now. You seeing it, or I need to get it bigger? Alright, so that should be good enough. So state 4 functions of the skeleton. I'm gonna put system there. No. You complete and send it to me. I'm not saying necessary that you need to complete it. No. Just ensure that I get it before next class, because Next class I might give you some more questions. So you do it and send it in your one free time between now and then the other class. Oh, so you complete those two. Alright, so question 3. Question 5, I can go across so you can see the rest of question 5. I'm gonna slide the screen across. Alright, so I'm gonna go right across. Right, so those are the bones. So where are the following bones found in the body? So humerus, radius, femur, pectoral girdle, vertebrae, patella. So right off those. So in terms of where, you're gonna tell me if they are found in your arms, if they are found in your legs, if they are found in your shoulder, in your hip, in your back. That's what the question is asking. So you tell me exactly where they are found. Okay. I'm gonna slide back across. You have fibula, so the last one should be fibula. It's only 7 questions. Alright, so once you complete the question in terms of writing them off, then you're free to go. I'm just waiting on the persons on YouTube, because in terms of YouTube there's a slight delay more than the Google Live. YouTube is like 20 seconds delay. So what I'm saying now on YouTube, it is about 20 seconds from now that they will actually hear. Alright, so students, thanks for coming. I really hope that the class size improve in terms of the population. So see you next week. I realize that there are persons who are James also in the integrated science class. Well, in Inti. Okay. Alright, so see you next week. Have a productive and safe weekend. So bye bye for now.